All right, last homework. Let's get it. Today we're going to be talking about section 3-5, which is standard form. All right, so let's go and open up the homework and start doing it. So, a little bit of quick recapping of what this section is about. So, in 3-5, we talk about the last form of linear equations, which is known as standard form. Standard form. Ax plus by is equal to c. Again, all this is just another form that we can see a linear equation. So going back to 3-3, we saw slope intercept, where you can clearly see we have our slope and our y-intercept, right? Slope and the y-intercept. In point slope, y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. We have the slope, and we have the point x1 y1 from here. So again, notice how this gave me point slope intercept and y-intercept. The slope and y-intercept. Here I got slope and point, hence why it's called the point slope. So in standard form, we actually get something very different. So here, we don't get the slope, but we are able to find the x and y intercepts. So we take here, we can find the x and the y intercepts. And that's what makes this equation special. So again, here we have slope and the y-intercept. Quick, just by looking at it. Here we have the point and slope, fairly quick by looking at it. Here, we can do two easy steps and we're able to find the x and y intercepts, which can then help us to find the slope. All right, so looking at this problem here, it says find the x and y intercept of the graph. Now, unfortunately for you, we can't graph this in our calculator, right? If you guys remember, our graphing calculator, we need it to be f of x or y equals. This is not in y equals. So we can't graph it. So we have to do this the traditional way, which is solve it using standard form, right? Or standard form methods. So first thing we're going to do is write down the equation. All right, so we have negative 3x plus 5y equals negative 4.5. All right, let me zoom in on that for you. 1 second. There it is. So how do we find the x and y intercepts? Well, this form is really convenient for that. And it's actually two really easy steps. So to find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0. Simple as that. So to find the x-intercept, we let y equal 0. What do you mean by that, Gons? Well, think of a graph, right? A little side note here. Think of a graph. If you find any point that's on the x-intercept, what's special about this? Oh, it's going to be x and the y will always be 0. If you find any point on the y-axis, which is the y-intercept, this one will always have an x of 0. See, so notice how any point that's on the axes has to have a 0. So we take that same principle here. To find the x-intercept, we let y equal 0. So we let y equal 0 on this equation. So I get negative 3x plus 5y equals a negative 4.5. We let y equal 0, again, to find the x-intercept, guys. So here, this y became 0. And now we solve it regular. 5 times 0 is 0. It goes away, so we're left with negative 3x equals negative 4.5. How do you solve for x here? We divide by that negative 3. So x equals 1.5. There it is. So my x-intercept is 1.5, or if you think of the point, it's 1.5 comma 0. The second part of the problem was, hey, can you find the y-intercept? Well, it's the same thing. To find the y-intercept, well, again, let's look at a little graph over here. What's special about the y-intercept? X is always 0, and that's actually something I've been telling you since chapter 2, right? The x value at the y-intercept is always 0. It's no coincidence. It's because we're going to use it in the future. So to find the y-intercept, we let x equal 0. So now we take our same equation, negative 3x plus 5y equals negative 4.5. And now we let x equal 0. So we have negative 3 times 0 plus 5y equals negative 4.5. Negative 3 times 0 goes away. So I'm left with 5y equals negative 4.5. To solve for y, we divide by 5, divided by 5. So we get y equals a negative 0.9. And again, if you write this as a point, we would have 0, comma, negative 0.9. There it is. So to find the x-intercept, we let y equal 0. We plug it in, and we solve for x. To find the y-intercept, we let x equal 0, and we solve for y. There it is. So let's go plug it in our answers. So the x-intercept, it says use an integer or a decimal point. My x-intercept was 1.5. Let me move my mouse. There it is. And my y-intercept was negative 0.9. Be very careful. Make sure you guys are reading the instructions here. Again, it said only enter an integer or a decimal. So again, in our notes here, we labeled it as points because we understand this is the y-intercept. The x has to be 0. This is x-intercept. The y is equal to 0. So these are the coordinate points, but these are the x and y actual values, right? So again, make sure you understand that, please. All right, just checking time here. Beautiful. Problem number 2. In a video game, you earn 8 points for each jewel you find. You earn 5 points for each star you find. All right, so again, remember, we're going to highlight important information. Right here, I'm giving tons of information. Notice how the first thing says 8 points per jewel, right? So I'm going to write that down. 8 points for each jewel. And I'm also given 5 points for each star. Now it says, write and graph an equation that represents the numbers of jewels and stars you must find to earn 360 points. Another key thing here is that it wants me to earn 360 points. All right. It says, what are 3 combinations? All they basically mean by here is what are 3, possible combinations of jewels and stars that I can get to make those 360. So the first thing is, let x be the number of jewels and y be the number of stars. Write an equation that represents the situation above. All right, so again, the first thing we need to do is write down what's given, right? So I'm given 8 points for each jewel and 5 points for each star. Now again, notice how they said let x be jewels and let y be the number of stars, right? And we're talking about numbers. Well, again, this is going back to chapter 1, writing equations. The 8 points for each jewel, notice how that is a multiplication. It's 8 points for every jewel we find. Do we know how many jewels we have? The answer is no. That is why we have the variable x. So I know it's 8 points per jewel, 8x, and it's 5 points for each star. Well, what is the variable for star? Y. So it's 8x plus 5y. And what did they say? They want to earn 360 stars. There's my equation. 8 points per joule. Notice how joule is x. Plus 5 points per star. Y is the number of stars, and I have to make a total of 360. So that is my first part, the first equation. 8x plus 5y is equal to 360. Now be very careful again. Notice how half of these problems are just reading carefully. We're not subtracting. We're combining the points. We're trying to earn a total, so we have to be adding. Now, A is wrong because notice how joules is not supposed to go with 5 points. Joules goes with 8 points. All right, there it is. Second part is they want us to graph this, right? Now, again, we can't plug this into our calculator, but it's okay. We don't have to because the benefits of standard form is that, hey, we can find our x and y intercept. So remember, to find the x and y intercept, I'm actually going to do it in this small section right here. Let me zoom in for you here. So to find the x-intercept, I let y equal 0, right? To find the x-intercept, I let y equal 0. So I'm going to take my equation, 8x plus 5y is equal to 360, and I'm going to let y be equal to 0. So look, this becomes 8x plus 5y is equal to 360, but y was actually what? 0. So what happens here? It goes away. So we're left with 8x is equal to 360. Divide both sides by 8. So x is equal to 45. Right? So what does this mean? Right? It's not just about graphs. Right? It's not just about finding points. What does this mean? Well, x is a number of joules. So that means that if you play this game and you only find joules, you need 45 joules with no stars to be able to get the 360 points that you need. Now let's go the other way, right? To find the y-intercept, we let x equal 0. So again, 8x plus 5y is equal to 360. Now x is 0. So I get 8 times 0 plus 5y is equal to 360. I get 5y is equal to 360. To solve for y, I divide both sides by 5. So I get y is equal to 72. The y-intercept is 72. Again, we're going in a point basis now because we're trying to graph this. So there it is. So what does this mean now? Well, this means that if we're playing our game and we're only looking for stars, I need 72 stars to be able to get the 360 points that I need. Notice how this is 72 stars and 0 joules. That is the thing that you have to be able to understand, right? So look, this is 0 joules and 72 stars, gives me 360. Or I can also do 45 joules and 0 stars. There it is. So we have our x and y intercepts, getting a little bit of the game. So looking at here, my x intercept is 45, my y is 72. So this one is okay, but this one stops below, so it's not this one. This is less than 40, so it's not this one. This one appears to be correct. Right, look. This is past 40. This is 50, so it's 45. This is below 80. It's over 40, 50, 60, 70, right above 70. There it is. So my answer is Bravo. So lastly, it says, give 3 combinations. Well, we already have some, right? Our x and y intercepts actually just told us that, right? If we zoom in on this, that was the whole point. I can either find 45 joules and 0 stars, because that's what that point was, or I can find 72 stars and 0 joules. Now, I just pick a point somewhere here. Notice how this happens to be a really nice point. So what point is this? Well, this is 10, 20. I can do 20 joules and 40 stars. 20 joules and 40 stars. And again, we can check this using our calculator. But they want us to find the combination, which happens to be this one. No, it's actually this one. My apologies. 0 joules, 72 stars, 45 joules, 0 stars, or 20 joules and 40 stars. And again, make sure you identify the correct points, guys. Be careful on your axes. Again, D was a good candidate, but it had the points reversed. Remember, it's X and Y.